Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy this channel and would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month where we do deep dives into some of the best art books around, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. You also get access to a Patreon exclusive Discord server where we share tips, feedback, work in progress, art exercises, and more, general art shop talk. And you also get access to an online archive where you can read my comic books digitally. If you would like a free digital sketchbook, if you'd like to get work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, if you'd like blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can go over to newsletter.jeremy.net, sign up for my free monthly newsletter. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books or if you read digitally on Comixology or Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a self-contained, done in one book. Or you can pick up my most recent project, Morningstar. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes have extensive back matter, script excerpts, thumbnails, page layouts, character designs, photo reference. I basically show you how I put the whole comic book together. And on the homepage of my YouTube channel, there are book flip throughs of all of the books. You can see what's inside before you pick them up. So if you want to check those out, head on over to amazon.jeremy.net. All right. So let's see. I see HJ Mars is in the chat already. Says looking forward to this. Not sure how much I'll be able to watch, but I know what I can will be great. Thank you. Kind of you to say. All right. And hey, good to see you. All right. So today, what we have here, let me pull up my gallery. What am I doing today? So, funny that I mentioned Morningstar, because when I did the first volume, the first collected edition of Morningstar, the cover that I currently have was not the first cover. I had a different idea. It was a concept of Lucifer who's riding a horse, twirling a lasso, and the lasso was on fire and it made a flaming pentagram. And I thought that was a pretty cool image, but it just did not read on the cover very well. Like when you looked at it, you couldn't really tell. It didn't spotlight Lucifer as a main character very well. It was just, he was too small. You couldn't really make out who he was. It was the whole lasso thing did not read as well as I thought it would. Yeah, it was a cool concept. It just, sometimes that's what happens. You have a really cool idea. When you put it down on paper, it doesn't, what you imagine does not lay out on the page the way that you thought it would. So anyway, I ended up redrawing it as the cover that the book currently has now, where it's just the more close-up sort of portrait shot of Lucifer standing, still keeping that flaming pentagram thing behind him, except instead of a lasso, it's just there in the air. And similar to that, while I am pleased with the illustration for Morningstar Volume 2, in terms of just in standalone illustration, it's got the serpent, representing evil. It's got Lucifer sitting with his shirt off, being a little bit of like beefcake there. I looked at a lot of Western covers, like Western paintings, and saw that a lot of it was like landscapes and a dramatic shot of a character. I like it. I'm not ashamed that this has been the cover, but I was just looking at the other day, and I'm trying to work on getting the book into print on other platforms besides just Amazon. I was thinking, well, if I'm going to do that, before I do, I should probably finalize a new cover, because I'd been thinking about doing a new cover for a while now. And being that I like this concept, I just thought, what if I do this concept, but just do it from a different angle so he's facing the camera and crop it a little bit more. So it's more of a from the waist up shot, kind of a half shot. I mean, I have his thighs, it's going down to like mid thigh. However, all of that's going to be covered up by the logo. As you can see here, like these are just really rough sketches of me just sort of trying to get a feel for the pose that I want. And then I switched over to dropping it into a frame here that has, on a low opacity, it's got basically the frame of the book. Um, and then I wanted to experiment with things like maybe having some of the other characters ghosted in the background. Although looking at this, it might just still work best with just the sky behind him. Let me switch brushes here. Switch erasers here. And check that I'm on the right layer here. A lot of checks. So let's see. So I haven't really committed to what I'm going to do with the background here. This is still sort of, I feel like this is still sort of a rough sketch phase. I haven't absolutely committed to any particular direction. The main thing is just making sure that the Lucifer's pose fits what I'm looking for, and then sort of build the other pieces around it. Let's see here. HJ Mars says, it's amazing for a rough sketch. Thank you. That's kind of you to say. What's funny is I've been trying to figure out how to keep more of that energy of the rough sketch in my final pieces, because I have the problem that many artists have, which is that as I tighten up and refine my pieces, they lose a lot of that energy. So I don't know, maybe as I go through this, I may try to experiment with leaving parts of it a little bit looser. This looks a little too fashiony. That also looks a little too fashiony. And by fashiony, I mean it looks more like a fashion magazine pose as opposed to a dude in a Western. It's supposed to look a little bit more rugged. Suppose this could work for now. What I'm trying to figure out is just what other elements I'm going to put in here. At this point, I should probably decide where I want the horizon to be. It's going to be a low horizon, even though I'm going to have his head, looking down at us. I don't imagine the horizon being way up at his eye line. Because that would mean that all of these mountains that are behind here, the mountains that in the rough sketch, like not rough sketch, but I'm still sort of using the background of the original cover that's up here. I'm kind of, oh, this must be behind that. Let's move this on top then. I'm kind of using this original mountain range and background as a stand-in. But if his eye line is all the way up, if the horizon line is all the way up here by his head, that means there's not going to be any sky at all. It means that the mountains are going to be up way above him. Because with a high eye line, you're going to be looking down, whereas with a low eye line, with a high horizon, you're going to be looking down, which means you're not going to see any sky. You're just going to see ground. And I do want to have him framed by sky because that just it's an easy way to separate the character from their environment, because you can make a sky a variety of colors. If it's sunset, you can make it bright reds and oranges and purples. You can make it clear blue. You can make it almost white. You can make it gray and cloudy. You can find a reason to make the sky any color you want because it's atmospheric. It's just easier to frame the character that way. Point being is that the lower the horizon, the more sky you're going to see in any given composition. So it works for me compositionally to just keep the horizon somewhere around the logo. And for all the work that I did in previous live streams about talking about perspective, for me, it's just sort of like once I rough in the horizon, the rest of it all just is sort of like, all right, just kind of get in where it fits in. The only time I get super tight about perspective is if I'm drawing like a city environment, buildings, or there's going to be something mechanical in the scene. Otherwise, I could just sort of rough in horizon line and just have everything else shoot out from there. Or shoot out from a vanishing point. It's interesting because compositionally, I would normally either try to make the vanishing point, the main vanishing point, a point of interest in the scene. So in this case, putting it behind the logo is one place. Putting it behind the gun would have been another choice. Putting it behind his head would be another choice. Putting it behind the snake. Those are sort of the three places. If I were going to put a horizon line or put a vanishing point in the composition, that's where I'd want to put it. And HJ says, as an aspiring comic book creator, this is so interesting to watch and listen to. Well, thank you. I mean, I've said this on the stream multiple times, but the whole premise that I try to go through is that, we always ooh and ah when we see a beautiful time lapse in a finished piece. It appears to evolve like magic. Whereas the truth is very little of it is magic. Most of it is hard work, experimentation, and applying classic design knowledge or classic drawing principles. That's what most of illustration, whether it's comics, concept art, whatever, that's really what it is. It's a lot more of, trial and error. It's almost like writing a paper. If you think about the idea that, like, when you have to write papers in schools, you're supposed to start with a thesis or a premise, and then you have to defend that, present the arguments for and against. And in the end, supposedly you will have made your argument for your thesis and proven it by the essay that you've written. So in a way, it's kind of like writing a visual essay. So let's see here. And all I'm doing right now is the thing that I mentioned about making the vanishing point someplace else. I'm just experimenting with what would it look like if the vanishing point were at the gun. So this is me. I'm not even right now drawing figures. This is me just looking compositionally at the vanishing point being about where the gun is in the picture. And then from there saying, all right, if I had the vanishing point there, what does that do to my picture. And there's no purpose for doing this. I already have a composition that I'm happy with. But I find that if I take the time to experiment, sometimes it will lead me someplace better than where I was originally going, or it will just teach me something because I am in a constant state of learning. Um, there is never a point where you know everything about art and you're just coasting. You're always challenging your whatever you thought you knew. You're always learning more, realizing, oh, I can understand this on a deeper level. Or you're taking things that you said, oh, this is just a tried and true fact, and you intentionally start trying to break those tried and true facts. Like that whole thing of you have to know the rules before you can break them. I'm in a phase where I'm still trying to master the rules. Because it's one thing to know the rules, like as in you've been shown them or you have books about the rules of composition or the rules of figure drawing. It's another thing to feel like you've mastered them. So I haven't mastered them yet, but I am at the phase where I will take a rule and say, well, what happens if I intentionally break it? And the piece I'm doing here isn't breaking, this thumbnail that I'm drawing isn't breaking the rules. It's just me saying, all right, I'm starting with the premise of working around my my vanishing point. Let's see what happens if I move my vanishing point. Like, what does that do? What does it do for the feeling of the drawing? That's really the question that I'm asking here. And I'm asking it in a tiny little thumbnail next to the larger thumbnail that I'm working on. And they're still both really rough sketches. But it's just me trying to work out in stick figure, what does this do? Does it feel different? Because I may look at this and say, wow, it's worth me giving up framing him with the sky because it might make the piece feel better. And the other thing is, I might try it and say, oh, it doesn't, I still like the original one I had, but looking at how this makes me feel towards the piece or the type of energy it gives off by changing changing the vanishing point, it might make me realize exactly what moving high or low does so that in future pieces I may automatically just decide I want this to be a low horizon or a high horizon. Like generally speaking, I know for a fact that like when you do a low horizon, the person you're looking up at is more dominant. They look more imposing because you're looking up at them. Things you're looking down on look weaker. Um, I was about to say that it could also feel more intimate looking down, but that's not really true. Feeling intimate can be a factor of how close or widely an image is cropped because you can be looking down or up at someone and it can still feel very intimate. So that I don't think would be accurate. But that's another thing I could play with is seeing if I can create a sense of intimacy through the horizon versus just how closely something is cropped. So sometimes it's you find interesting things just by trying to do something that you know normally doesn't work. Seeing if there's any there. But one of the things I realize is as I'm drawing this, I'm gonna have to change the way I'm drawing the figure because you're gonna be looking down at his legs as opposed to looking at them kind of at the horizon. That's the other thing. You go back to this larger one, and the legs are like straight forward. Now his torso still seems like it's kind of forward, upright. I don't have it like you're looking like he's really bent backward, like you're really looking up at him. But that's more of a factor that I'm not positioning this like the camera is super close to him, so you're not looking at his upper torso like a box that's tilted way back and away. That's if the camera were super, super close to him. Now, I'm not at the point in terms of like storyboarding where I know whether I'm using like a 35 lens or a 100 millimeter lens, that sort of thing. But I'm just think generally I know, the close, the longer the lens, the less forced perspective you're getting. Whereas the less fisheye you're getting, whereas the wider the lens, the more fisheye you're getting. So this one is probably more like a long lens that's zoomed in to crop it to the level that he's at, but you're not getting a lot of perspective distortion on him. What's funny is in the little thumbnail, to me, it looks like instead of him holding a gun that he's pointing at you, for some reason, this looks to me like he's got a parrot on his arm. True, it's just a little stick figure. There's not enough detail there to really figure out what it is that he's doing. You can barely even figure out that's a human. All right, I think that I've drawn enough to see that this is enough for me to see that nothing special jumps out at me by changing this angle. So I don't really feel the need to do more. Let's see here. Hey, I see Paul in the chat. Says, hey there, Jeremy. Glad to finally catch your live stream. Hey, well, thanks for popping in. It's good to see you too. I've been doing some great stuff over there on Instagram. I dig your work. Always nice to have a fellow creator hang out and pop in while I'm doing these. I am working on a revised cover. If I zoom out here, the image in the upper left is the current cover for my the second volume of my Western series Morningstar, and I just decided I wanted something a little bit more dramatic, so I am reworking that cover, and that's the sketch that I've got going on here. And I was just doing a couple of little thumbnails, experimenting with some poses. Let's see here. I'm still not happy with this leg. All right. So I guess the real question is, how much land do I want to put back there? And I also originally had an idea. I am wondering if I should probably do this in a separate layer in separate colors. As a matter of fact, I probably should. I'm going to come in here and let me just scoop out this head in the corner here. Take this and cut paste. And I'm going to change the color here. Well, no, that's not what I want. What I do want is to colorize and just change it to like a blue color. Turn off that color fill. Oh wait, no, that's why that's not working. Reset. Step hue saturation, color balance, shadows. Let's move the shadows towards cyan and blue. There we go. All right. So what I'm trying to do here is I kind of imagine sort of a Drew Struzany effect, and that's why I realized I should probably make all these different colors because there's places where I'm going to want to move and cut and crop around. But I wanted to see if I could possibly work this out where having some other characters in the background. Maybe place Gabrielle down here. And the challenge being that I don't have as much space to make a really elaborate character shot. So the question is, how do I place a silhouette? And what I'm thinking is just having her standing off to the side, maybe holding a rifle. And how do I give her a dynamic silhouette in such a small space? And also have that silhouette kind of fuse with Lucifer's silhouette. So I'm using the horizon line as a measurement tool. And I'm saying, all right, mid thigh, not mid thigh, but a little bit below the pelvis for Lucifer. Let's say Gabrielle's a little bit shorter than him. She actually should be significantly shorter than him, so maybe she should only be about that tall. Point being is that I don't know if anyone's ever showed you the idea of hanging figures on a horizon, but the simple concept, and this is in it's somewhere in Andrew Loomis's Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. But the idea of hanging figures on the horizon is that if you draw a horizon line, if you say, all right, you've got a main character and the horizon is going through his eyes, any other characters you put in that scene, regardless of how tall they are, where they're placed, if they're about the same height, you can just place a bunch of figures on the horizon. Zooming in here a little bit more. You can place a bunch of figures on the horizon. And if you just draw them at the proper height with their eyes where they should be in relationship to the horizon, they'll be in proportion. They'll have the proper scale. So for instance, if there's another character who is maybe significantly taller than the first character you did, then maybe the horizon line will be, instead of going through their eye line, maybe it goes through underneath their chin. So you can take another character, and if you take this character, you can put him way in the background, but if you put the horizon line, let's say just below his chin, this character, just by the fact that you've placed his head above that horizon line, you have made this character like this much taller than the first character. Meaning that if you draw this character, he's farther away, like he's on the other side of the frame here. And even though this figure is smaller in terms of relationship, just drawing space, his height will read as taller than that first character. So that is the idea of using the horizon as a measurement tool, or as they say, hanging characters on the horizon. And I use that a lot of times in composition when I'm just trying to figure out how I want characters to relate to each other physically. It's good for just placing stick figures. Now I've got Gabrielle kind of back there. And I'm sketching these figures in to see if this idea of having multiple figures in the background even works. Because considering the fact that the logo is going to be running across this large middle area, there may be this whole scene may be so full in terms of artwork that the only thing that might make sense for the background is just the sky and the earth, which, going back to this first one, I think the idea of him, what I was trying to convey was that there's this sense of peace with menace in the middle. Like it's just a peaceful, serene sky. And yet you have this person about to do violence with this serpent wrapped around him. So I was trying to do sort of a juxtaposition, if you will, if I want to use a fancy art term, a juxtaposition between peace and violence, because that's kind of what is one of the ongoing themes of the series. But trying to convey that idea of having multiple figures in the background and trying to make this feel kind of movie poster-ish sounds cool, but I think it might be too much. And I might need to pull it back to just have it be like a portrait of Lucifer, which is what I was trying to go for with the first one. The more that I draw these little figures in there, the more I say, because the fact matters that unless you know the book, that you can't even tell. Like, usually the way I try to design is that they have some feature that you can recognize. The way you can recognize Michael over here, the Archangel Michael, is by his hat and his hair. He's got kind of that Afro puff and usually has a bowler hat on. All of that is cropped off. You can't see any of that in this. So the thing that makes this face readable isn't even present in that shot. So all of this is leading me to think that all of these elements that I'm trying to consider for the background are probably not going to work. And that's the reason for doing these layout sketches. Because in theory, you could start with just the pose. Because what I started with first was, the sketch that's to the left or to the right of the original cover. And it was me just blocking out and being like, wait, that pose isn't really working. Let me just try and work on just the gestural pose. And the second drawing I did, this really feels like I was thinking about what do I want his body to feel like. Just trying to get in tune with it storytelling wise. And I think I got it on this second one. And then from there, sort of building the whole, trying to build the rest in terms of, all right, what's going to be the background around him? What's going to be the other figures? In theory, I could have just started drawing this as the cover and then spent a bunch of time trying to fit different things into the background, fit things into the environment, changing the horizon line. I could have done that while working through the drawing, and I might have spent a lot more time changing things that didn't work when the real answer was keep it simple. So the idea of doing additional sketches beyond just the first sketch that I like is for me to try and test out all of the things that I might try in a final piece first. That way I waste less time, to be honest. I can just come in and say, all right, it really does need to be just him in the background. It really is just me taking that first cover and just doing it from an angle that feels more dramatic. Paul says, these are the kind of tips I love. For me, my favorite thing when I listen to other artists talk is the thought process. Because for me, I will tell you, some people do find drawing tedious and they just like having the finished thing. Like it's similar to writers saying, I hate writing, but I love having written. For me, the finished product is it's not arbitrary and it's not beside the point. I'm proud to have a finished work. But the thing I enjoy the most about illustration and making comics is the problem solving. The actual act of making the thing here is what I really, really enjoy. So let's see here. I think I'm going to group these. What I also tend to do is I'll experiment with stuff group a few layers, and then just turn off the versions that I don't need. So I'm going to get rid of the other eyes, heads, faces that I drew on there. And I'm just going to work on, okay, what is the landscape? Because I know now it's just going to be him and his logo. Make sure I'm on the right layer again. Him, logo, landscape. And that's kind of all I need. And I think what I'm gonna do, I was trying to decide. I didn't think ahead and prep out the. Normally, when I draw something like this, I would have the trade dress, meaning the cover, the logo, the subtitle, my name at the top. I would have all this transparent, like just by itself, and drop that into a document to draw the cover. But I think what I'm going to do instead is I am going to use the template that I have for doing prints, and I'm going to put it in an 11 by 14 print, and I'm going to frame it in such a way that this will be in the center of the print, but there will be enough space on either side to just sort of like fill out, the rest of the horizon. And then I can crop it for the cover. Because when in doubt, it's always better to have extra space around your final image to crop to, as opposed to deciding, oh wait, I want to reuse this cover for a print, or I want to reuse it for a bookmark or something else. And it turns out that you like need more space up above or to the left or right. That's always a pain in the ass. I mean, so a lot of times you can just go in and use Photoshop or Affinity Photo and just do in painting, where it'll kind of complete the background for you, clone it based on what you've already drawn. But I greatly prefer working that out myself. So all I'm doing here is I'm just sort of figuring out the mountains that are going to be in the background. And I'm not even really thinking about the landscape per se. I'm just thinking about what are interesting places for these lines to intersect with the main character. So really the mountains are acting like a secondary frame. And something else that I was thinking about was for the color scheme, this one, the logo is what ties it together with my first cover, which I've got over here. And I kind of intentionally went with sort of a Harry Potterish, blue and blues and oranges. It's kind of a classic. You can't go wrong with that color scheme. And originally I was thinking about trying to invert that or find a dramatically different color scheme. But then it occurred to me, I don't know why I said it occurred to myself. That sounds almost like talking in the third person. There's something about that bothers me. It just sounds really pretentious, which I have enough trouble with already. But it occurred to me that maybe I should just try to duplicate the color scheme of the previous one as closely as possible and try to create unity of it, where it's almost like you can tell that it is a different image, but you're like, it's the same color scheme. The whole world is tied together. Um, Maybe put a bunch of rock slab, like cracked earth, underneath here. And I don't want it to feel like cobblestones. I want it to feel like just dirt. But I'm also wondering, part of me thinks I'm going to take this image that I have here and I'm going to shrink it down and I'm going to do a value study next. And I'm wondering if it might look cool to have the cracks in the earth start out being black, but then almost have them glowing as if, there's some force underneath the ground radiating up. But the nice thing is, even though the horizon, the vanishing point is low at Lucifer's pelvis instead of at his face, you still get the sense that the earth and everything that's in here compositionally is kind of rushing up into him and up his body. The other reason why I want to do value studies is because I am trying to decide if I want to have storm clouds above him versus just clear skies. Hey, my boy Amar in the chat. How you doing, Amar? Good to see you. Says hello to all. And he says, yeah, are you doing the alternate cover for the last issue of your book? Yes. Well, I'm doing I'm redrawing the cover for the collected volume 2. I just felt like the first volume, this cover that I did, I am happy with it as an illustration on its own, but it just doesn't feel as dramatic. And when I compared it to the cover for volume 1, this portrait, it just feels a little bit more intimate, being kind of a tighter shot. And I said to myself, let me see if I can bring some of that energy into this cover. So I think I was like, yeah, I think I want to change because I mentioned this at the start of the live stream. The cover that is currently for volume 1 was not the original cover. I have a previous version that I drew, and I liked it at the time, but it just didn't convey everything that I really needed it to. So I revised that. And I'm starting to think that no matter what, anytime I draw any cover, I'm generally not I'm going to like it when I finish it. And then a certain number of months later, I'm going to come back and say, nah, it's not working for me, and want to change it. I think that's just a motif for me, right? I realized I was just sort of mindlessly drawing more rocks, more cliffs back here. And instead of cliffs, what I probably need are like large boulders on the ground. Maybe there's shrubbery towards the edges. It doesn't need to be super detailed. In fact, it should not be super detailed because it is the background. Yeah, I think that for the most part works for me. So the next step here is just working out values or doing a quick test of values. So I'm going to erase this little thumbnail that I had over here because this is where I'm going to place my value study. And this is one of the things I really like about working digitally is I can just take a piece of a drawing. Like, I started with, a first rough sketch I didn't like. Then I did a second sketch that I liked. Then I took that sketch, duplicated it, and framed it with the logo and title of the book. Then through a background, even though it's a background, it's on top of the figure. Then I can take this and duplicate, move it over. Let's flatten this duplicated one. Scale it down just a tad. I don't really need to scale it down. I can't tell you why my instinct is to scale it down, but I feel like I like to have space. I think I want to scale it down because I know myself well enough to know that I may end up wanting to do more than one value study, and I'll need to scale it down to make room for the any additional ones. That's probably why. But I'm going to shave off a little bit of this extra stuff outside of it. And then take this. Let's put it on multiply. Nope, I don't want to duplicate it. I want to put it on multiply. Create another layer that I'm going to put underneath it. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start dark and move to light. So let me frame this. And let's fill it with a particularly dark gray, not all the way black, but maybe like a 70% gray. There we go. Now it's just a matter of deciding where I want there to be light. And while we're at it, I'm going to alpha lock this layer, which is just a simple gesture. If you just swipe right on a layer, it locks the transparent pixels, meaning that, let me switch this now to almost white, not quite white, 20%. If I paint in here, it paints, but if I move outside, now you're not going to be able to see the difference anyway because the background is a 20% gray, but let me deselect that. Let me just switch to black. Point being is that now I have this layer set so that if I paint on this gray layer, what you can't see is that I'm moving my brush across and all the way across. So I'm doing all these zigzaggies. It stops it at that gray border. Everything outside of that. Everything outside of that is locked, so I can't color on it. Now, the first step is just framing the figure. Let's see here. Hey, James is in the chat. He says some useful techniques. Yeah, happy to share. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do, a lot of these tricks and approaches are things that other illustrators have shown me over the years, or things I've picked up from other YouTube videos. And it's just a matter of passing that knowledge on. That's the best thing we can do as artists is when we find something cool or find an approach that helps with our workflow. It's just, hey, say, hey, have you ever thought about trying this or trying that? Um, with the knowledge that not every technique works for every artist. And that's actually the reason why I think it's so important to share a variety of approaches and ways to do things, because things that work for one artist may not work for another. And you may spend years and years struggling with gesture or composition or anatomy, and you've been taught certain ways to approach it. And then somebody comes up with a completely different way that you've never thought of before. And you're like, oh, it all makes sense. You just opened it all up for me. Which is why, again, that's one of the reasons why I keep saying that I'm a lifelong student, because there's still aspects of the creative process that I struggle with. And just looking at other people's techniques and approaches help me find ways to maybe do things that I didn't think were possible, or just, it's not how I was shown. And you learn that, just because you were shown to do it one way or another, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the be all end all. Let's see here. James says, I recently bought a new sketchbook since my old one was getting filled up. Says, I had fun experimenting this past week. Yeah, it's funny. I realized that I fell out of the habit of carrying a sketchbook with me everywhere I go. And I have like 2 or 3 of these, what is this? 5.5 by 8.5. So these are actually the size of my graphic novels. I have a couple of these that I've bought, and I really actually prefer the spiral bound ones, because the idea of having a book with like a cover that's open, it's like I'm kind of holding it and balancing the book, or I'm like trying to balance it in my palm while I draw on one side and trying to not have the cover be in my way. Whereas I like spiral bound ones where I can just flip it over and then I've just got the pad that I'm drawing on. Point being is that, much like you, I realize I've fallen out of the habit of filling my sketchbooks as regularly as I should. So I need to get back to it too. Part of it's that I've got a digital sketchbook running on my iPad too. But let's see here. Yeah, James says, right. Some artists feel more comfortable drawing with, and like others are more comfortable with working out shapes first. Yeah. Drawing with lines. Some people are more comfortable drawing with lines. Some people are more comfortable with shapes. Yeah, I definitely have been a line person for most of my life, and only in recent years have I started approaching with shape and starting to work that, because it's like I'm starting to see. I've been told since I started drawing that line, shape, value are all aspects of the 3-dimensional form. Trying to do not necessarily realistic art, but representational art, meaning it's supposed to look like a specific object or a specific person or a specific thing. That line, shape, tone, they all describe different aspects of how this thing exists in 3D space. But it isn't until I've been drawing for literally decades that I'm actually conveying that in a particular scene or in a piece. So it's nice now that I'm getting to a stage where I'm seeing more and more of that. I'm going into the sky that I put in here, and I'm making it lighter at the bottom and leaving it that darker gray more towards the top. And then I'm going to come back in with like white and put that near the horizon. It's almost like I'm trying to draw like the underside of the clouds. Or maybe I'm just drawing clouds. Let's see here. Yeah, James says the spiral ones tend to be more secure too. Um, HJ says, hi, sorry, Jeremy, I'm back. This is great. I'm glad you're enjoying. You don't never feel bad about stepping out to take care of what you got to take care of. That is the beauty of these live streams being archives, that you can come back at any time and watch later. And I do check the comments. So if you are ever watching a live stream later and there's something that you want to respond to, leave a comment. It can be one that's like a month old, a year old, however long old. You know, I might have trouble remembering what I was thinking at the time I did it if it's one of the really old videos. But I do try to go back and keep an eye on those and respond. Sometimes some comments slip through, and I'll find that somebody made a comment like 3 years ago, and I somehow missed it. And I always feel bad that I didn't respond. But all right. So the main thing here is I have separated foreground from background. Well, sky from figure. Now I have to separate the sky from the earth. And the question is, do I want him to be darker? Do I want the background to be darker, or do I want him to be darker? And I think I'm leaning towards background darker and him lighter. That feels like it's got a stronger contrast. But if I make the background lighter, he will still stand out against it more. Well, why don't I start here with, let me move a couple of steps to, if I did like sort of a 70%, then let's move to a 50% gray. And let's see how that looks. So the idea here is pretty simple in that I'm just blocking out values and just saying, all right, the figure is going to be in this, the background is going to be in the dark value range. The figure is going to be in the mid-tone range. The sky is going to be in the light range. So keeping it pretty simple. And then within each color range, I can kind of say, all right, how far out do I want to make these colors? Like how far dark or light do I want to push them? It also makes sense to make Lucifer more towards the lighter and leave the background darker, because generally speaking, dark colors recede, light colors come forward, which might make you question, well, why wouldn't I just make the background dark then and let him come forward? If it were an indoor piece or a night scene, that's a way to go. I'm not saying that that's a wrong approach, but given that it's a Western outdoorsy scene, it feels more natural to have the sky be light. And that's another thing. I realize I don't do enough. I've never done enough outdoor, or as they call it, plein air sketching. That's something that I really need to bring into my art practice more, because drawing figures out in sunlight in the day, it looks very different than studio lighting. Let's see here. Now I'm realizing I've got all this here, and I could leave all of this as Lucifer's wings going back, but I realized I did start to draw it with, hang on, let me undo this just so I can show you. I'm looking at this now and I realized that I did intend for the wings to go up like that, and for all of this to be more sky or rock. but I think that I actually do like it being wing. I don't know. I'm thinking for a moment. Let's see here. HJ says the glowing could be so cool. Yeah, that's something I definitely am still thinking about. Like I said, a lot. You can see how much just going from rough sketch to compositional framing of the trade dress to working out the values. I haven't even gotten to color yet, but how much how much the tone of the piece can be blocked in just by working out your values first. I'm just sort of looking and thinking because part of me says fill in all of this with wing, meaning that area that I just blocked out. But part of me says, you know what? Maybe split the difference. Have his wings come down a little bit further than they were in my rough sketch, but not quite as far as I have them here. And then what's supposed to be, what I'm trying to indicate on the other side is just the other wing coming down. But it might be that, you know, I believe it or not, I think I am going to have to get a maquette and physically, I'm trying to think of a way to describe what's going on in my head. Let me draw a quick diagram over here to the side. I have to create a different layer to show you. But in my head, I'm saying, let's say if we were looking at, here's a man with wings. And he's got both his wings spread out when you're looking right at him. So I am having trouble imagining the position of the wing that's farther away if you take that same man and you turn him so that it's a 3/4 shot. And this is more than a 3/4 shot. Let's just stop BSing. Because this is, well, no, his torso is at 3/4. His head is facing straight on, but his torso, where his shoulders are, where the wings are, that's still sort of 3/4. So that kind of tracks. But anyway, he's turning away from us. His torso is 3/4, and then when you get down to his pelvis, that's more of a profile. That's what's happening with his body. It's turning like that. But anyway, the point is that this is the same pose with the wings, and I need to find some reference to decide where that wing on the left side should be. I can kind of imagine it, and just doing that simple sketch, what this sketch tells me is that I am showing too much wing in my composition. But the wing makes a nice frame for his head. The challenge is to place the wing in a place where you can see enough of it that you can tell what it is, but not so much of it that it doesn't look like it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So looking at this sketch now, I'm realizing that, let me go back to my tone layer, that all of this should not be wing. There shouldn't be wing down there from the wing that's behind him. What there should be instead is sky, and then as you go over to the side, more cliffs, more towards the edge of the frame. And we're at a little bit past an hour, so I think we're going to wrap it up here unless anybody has some final questions. But before I wrap it up, just because HJ mentioned it, I'm going to come in here with a little bit of white. And let's see what happens if I just hit the cracks in the earth and just have some of them start off glowing at the edge of the frame. And mind you, I don't need to go, part of the reason why I want to have them just glowing at the edge and then turn into just regular cracked earth is because this is all, that whole thigh region, the whole region below his waist, most of that is going to be covered by the large logo. So I really don't need to spend, I don't need, nor should I waste the time putting a lot of detail in that region. It's all going to get covered up. So the idea is just to go do like cracked desert earth. And part of me is actually even thinking, do I want to waste the time rendering all of that out, or do I want to just find like a 3D texture of cracked desert earth and just drop that into my illustration? I might do that. I mean, who knows? I might do that and then just enhance it a little bit, where I take it, or I could drop it in there, distort it, and have it there, and then almost like I'm inking a photo. There's that whole quote that Wally Wood used to have where he says, never draw what you can reference, never reference what you can copy, never copy what you can steal. Whole point being that he was just like, dude, don't make more work for yourself. And as you guys have seen over the years, I am the king of making more work for myself in my process. And part of that is just because I'm just incredibly curious, and I keep looking at, well, what if I do this? Well, what if I do that? What I'm saying is, don't be like me. Do as I say, not as I do. Look for efficient ways to get stuff done. Don't get lost in details like I do. It's not a great habit for productivity. It's a great habit as an artist to just constantly be curious and want to grow and explore. But I don't want you guys to fall into the same trap I do, where it's endless exploration and zero execution. There is a point where you have to shit or get off the pot. So, yeah. But I think that the cracks, I want it to be subtle. I don't want it to draw attention to itself like, oh my God, the energy coming out of the earth. I want it to just be a subtle thing where you're just looking at a cracked, dry earth, like desert, a dry desert bed. And you can see energy glowing out of that. So, Paul says, looking good, Jeremy. Thanks for sharing. I'll definitely catch you next time. Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. And thank you for stopping by. So on that note, I think we'll wrap it here. And I'll tell you, getting back to these, I have like so many illustrations on deck. But one, it's nice to get back to Morningstar stuff, being that I've been done with it for a while now. It is nice to kind of revisit it and draw him again. Who knows? I may percolate on a third book at some point, but I certainly don't want to promise that, because I wrote it to be a very definitive ending with Lucifer's Fall. So we shall see. But oh, I keep forgetting to mention March 24th through 26th, Wondercon. E23. Let me see if I've got in my, you know what, stay here. E23. I will be Artist Alley E23 Wondercon, March 24th through 26th of, what year is this? 2023. Yeah, I'll be at WonderCon. I'll be exhibiting. I will have a bunch of new prints. I will have, for the first time at a convention, I'll be having Morningstar Volume 2, so it'll be nice. And since I'm going to be changing the cover that's the original one is going to be for a limited time, because, you know, hopefully by the time I'm out of stock of the ones that I have, I'll have the new cover ready and have it in the pipeline. So get these while you can, because you're going to be going. And on that note, let's come back to me. And again, if you enjoy these live streams, we have a thing we call Art Book Study Group. We do it twice a month on Patreon. We dig into some of the best art books around, try to suck out all the knowledge we can. We've been doing a long-running series on The Figure by Walt Reed. We've got another session coming up this Wednesday. We do them twice a month. It's at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time, and I'll have a Discord voice channel open. So not only can you guys watch, but you guys can actually talk to me while I'm drawing verbally. Just come in, chime in. If you want to post stuff in the Discord server for me to look at while we're on live streaming, we can do that. It's a Patreon exclusive live stream. So for as little as $2 a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber. You'll get access to that Discord server that I mentioned. You'll also get access to the archive of all the Art Book Study Group videos. We've got something like 70 videos now. And these aren't just hour-long live streams. These are 2.5, 3-hour live streams. Some of them have gone 4 or 5 hours. We get into it. Lots of great time, lots of great art talk. So like I said, we've got one coming up this Wednesday. And for patrons, I will be posting the reminder later today. So you guys will know and have all that info there. You also get access, as I mentioned before, to an online archive of my comics. So you can read those online. So patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. Links in the description for this video. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books or read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It's a standalone psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morningstar. It tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2, with the soon-to-be limited cover, contains the conclusion to the story, issues 5 through 8. Both have extensive back matter, script excerpts, character designs, page layouts, photo reference, thumbnails. I basically show you how I put the entire comic book together. And on the homepage of my YouTube channel, if you scroll down, you'll see book flip-throughs for all of those books, so you can see what is inside before you pick them up. All right, guys, again, thank you for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. I love having the company and the great conversations while I'm working on these continued comics and illustration projects. I appreciate your support. I never say this enough. Hit the like button. Hit that like button. If there's friends you know that you think would be into the type of stuff I'm talking about, hit that share button. Help spread the word. Help me grow the channel. I greatly appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. That's it for now. Go be creative.